Hey, welcome back to the podcast. Today I am chatting with Nate Rubin. Nate is the CEO of EPX, a computer vision consulting company. We're going to chat about growing a company out of college, growing it with children, as well as growing a tech company successfully through Nate's experience. Now, Nate is on a mission to put eyes on machines, and anything your eyes can see, the camera can see it better. And he believes that our world is seeing a paradigm shift in how we approach computers and cameras that will revive the internet itself. And he wants to play a part in that automation revolution so that we can massively improve our quality of life. Nate, welcome to the pod.
Hey, Raul. Good to be on here.
Yeah, good to connect, right? This is cool. We're connecting beforehand for the first time, and we're going to dive into a podcast. One of my dudes on LinkedIn posted a while back about the different age or gaps in a life cycle where people can start their business. Usually, he talks about the gap like post graduation. You're usually single during that time, or you're dating your future spouse potentially. And that's a good gap to start a business because you have more quote unquote free time. The second gap would be like you're happily married, or if that's your path, like you're married there. In the first couple of years before kids, that's another open space to start a business. The third space you mentioned was like after kids go out of the house and you're an empty nester, that's another space to start a business. And I'm like, that's like living life on easy mode because that's not really real life. I think that's an opportunity for a lot of people. But I want to start off by saying, bro, you started the business post college with 3 kids. How did that happen? Tell me more about growing up a company with 3 kids.
Shoot. Yeah, I'll just say, I went to university here in Utah studying electrical engineering. I love building things. I'm always into Legos. I was pretty good at math and science. And so that was my trajectory. And I really thought once I graduate, I'm going to go work for, I don't know, defense contractors, like what a lot of electrical engineers will go off and do. And I remember I interned for a big aerospace company and they had working on a specific intern project. And I was like, this is great. I had to carpool in there and I was the last person on that carpool. I was so excited to get my work done. I thought I was doing a great thing. The following summer, I back and I said, how did you like my project? And they're like, where'd his project go? And it was a joke around there because they just didn't feel like their work mattered very much. None of the engineers felt the company does aerospace things, but you're just a cog in a wheel. And sometimes your project gets canceled. That was my first moment where I said, I don't think I like to work for big giant companies. I want to do something meaningful. Right as I was finishing college, I had an idea. And this is something that I talked to, I think your listeners have had lots of ideas. Ideas are plenty. There's so many ideas. Something I tell entrepreneurs is let's not bother signing NDAs because we both have too many ideas that we
Yeah,
don't have
act
time to
on. Yeah, it
steal
doesn't matter.
ideas. I had an idea for my son, actually. It was a product idea that came about because I had my first child when my wife and I had been married for just a year. So he was a honeymoon baby and he was premature and he had to be on a ventilator. They had him in the NICU. Thank heavens, everything's fine. He came home just a few days later. And then that's when the panic started for my wife. So she started to wonder, was my baby breathing? Right. She goes in and she's constantly checking to the point she's not sleeping. And so now I've got the baby who's not sleeping. I've got a wife who's not sleeping. And I can't make either one of them sleep because one's worried for the other. And that's when the idea came is, oh, what if I could design a product, namely a camera that could look at a baby and tell if the baby was breathing, tell if the baby was okay. Your listeners would know sudden infant death syndrome. You probably know what that
Yeah.
is. And that was the first product idea. And yeah, it was a really amazing thing to work on. But starting a business still wasn't in my mind. I actually did my master's thesis on this particular subject using cameras to do something new and unique. I'd spoken with some investors who were actually out of state, in fact, out of country investors. And they said, we love this idea. Let's go ahead and build this thing together. It was actually a serendipitous thing, but most people don't come across that. And I talked to a few people close to me, mentors of mine, and they said, don't do it. They'll steal your idea. It's not going to work out. It's going to be a bad thing. But I felt called to do it. And I think one thing that a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, they want to be entrepreneurs because they want to do something great. They just don't know what it is. And what I look at it as is you'll feel that calling. You'll feel like you're called to do something and it'll just hit you like a brick wall. And you'll feel that, you'll feel compelled. Some entrepreneurs want to just go out and start something and they don't know what it is yet. And they struggle for a little bit because they really haven't come across that
The big
that great
why.
idea. They just know they want to be successful. For me, it did. Thankfully, I was able to get into something early, but it was a challenge. I'm not going to lie, Raul. It was a big challenge because, yes, you got the family, you're trying to raise kids, spend time with your kids. And yeah, you're putting the 67, 80 hours a week into just getting everything going on your business. And that's a challenge. There's no other way around it. It's a huge challenge for
Yeah, but
me.
it is a manageable thing. But it's also something that I want to compress, and that's the art and the, I want to say it's the difficulty. It is the, not to use just your words of challenge, but that's what it really is. Like you, it's a level of responsibility where you have to know that you have to be one healthy, relationship healthy with your wife, relationship healthy with your kids, relationship healthy with the investors, your new boss, and then also with building the company, serving the clients. And that's, I think, the art and the challenge in itself, where can you do that? I think it is possible and you're proving it. But tell us more about what you actually did to meet the new standards of that level of challenge.
So I'd say there's a level of probably the hardest thing for me is I tend to worry about things that are outside my control. Don't we all? And in a business, I would say, I told my wife, I said, I probably get around to 40% of the things that I'm supposed to do. And then I realized that 80% of the things actually didn't bring about any, and I use those numbers usually, but I would say the majority of the work I actually spent on, oh, we got to fix this one thing. Oh, I got to go on to this other, I need to go work with this different marketing agency. Oh, I got to deal with this employee. A lot of the work I did was just scattershot haphazard. And I
Mm.
felt like I was going all over the place. Most of the work actually didn't equate to much. I'd say 20% of my work actually was effective. So I think when you sit down and you think about what will actually move the football forward, again, it's like in my business, for example, even today, I do consulting, I do contract work for other companies. And I might want to fix how we're doing our invoicing. I want to do our internet in our new office. There's like these little things that I just want to spend time on. But if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not actually going out meeting with a customer, go outside and touch grass, meet with customers to bring in those clients, those other things can be taken care of, or they can be just pains in your butt for a little bit. And they're not the real core thing on my business. So I guess for me, with SmartBeat, which was the name of my first company that we did baby monitoring, I don't think I did a particularly good job managing my
Mm.
time. I think I spent way too much time on problems that ultimately didn't matter. So I guess the takeaway from there is from my own failures, I don't think I did a very good job at that, to
Yeah,
be
but
quite honest. Ultimately, the company, thankfully, we were able to sell it, which is that big exit, right? That's where we all want to see ourselves, is have a company, either run it for the rest of your life or sell it and move on to the next big thing. And that was a huge moment, but man, that moment looked so far away for a number of years. It looked like our bank account hit zero many times during
mm.
that process. It was stressful. And again, that was where my mind kept going back and saying, like, how do I fix this? I got to fix this. And a lot of times I just had to say, it's out of my hands. I can do the best I can. Whether that investor says yes or no, it's out of my hands. Whether we
There's only
get
so
that,
much you can control.
yeah. Yeah, whether we get that distributor agreement or not, it's out of my hands. You just do the best you can. If the result's unfavorable, you just have to be able to let it go. And so that was well, it still was a hard thing for me to
No, I
try
hear
not to
you.
worry about things that are outside my control.
Fast forward to today, what would be some of the key insights that you are applying based on the experience?
Yeah, I think now today, thankfully, I'm not under there's a big difference, especially for, you know, I don't, I, for when you take on venture capital or angel money or anything like that, it is a different type of business. Just, it's a different animal. I determined I want to stay clear of taking that type of capital again because it was a lot of stress. You just are stressed all the time with businesses like that. So in my current company, I'm self-funded. We bootstrap everything. And it means we grow a little bit slower, but we grow at a pace that's comfortable with my lifestyle. I do spend late nights in the office, of course. I do rush jobs for clients, of course. But now when I'm thinking about, okay, what's the next 2 or 3 months of revenue going to look like? Do I have enough things in my funnel to keep my people busy? I learned to turn off that part of my brain, and I just have to stop thinking about it. Do something I love, go on a hike, like I said, touch grass, and get out of my own head for a little bit, because ultimately it can drive yourself a little bit crazy. So that's something that, again, I think for that emotional well-being is a huge driver for me.
I hear you. And so optimizing your time, focusing on what you can control, then also knowing how to, I won't say turn off parts of your brain, but just put your focus on something different versus always like on go mode. Tell me more about like the iterations that you made. So the first business, cameras to review breathing, which is pretty freaking awesome. That IP is pretty interesting. How did you iterate from there to where you are now? And Like what made you land here?
When we were purchased by another company, when that happens, you usually sign an employee agreement. They like to have a founding team around. And so I did that for a number of years. And I got to do more of the engineering. Again, I got to use more of the engineering side of my brain because when you're running a business, you don't have time for any of that. And I did that for a number of years, but it got to be, I don't know, bureaucratic. I was, again, I now felt like I was back in that big defense company where I'm just in there with a bunch of other people, not really doing, I think, the best work that I could. And I will say this, I had a team with me that I just loved. I loved the team that I created. All of us came from our old company to the new company, and we all left. We started a new company. And what's interesting here is that we actually, as opposed to the last company I did where I said, here's the market, here's the product, right? Here's how I'm going to deliver the product and let's go, let's build this. Because something that I think it's Steve Blank, he wrote the Startup Owner's Manual. He says, a startup is a temporary organization in search of a scalable and repeatable business model. And I love that, right? The startup is actually looking for a business model. It's not guns a-blazing, let's do sales, let's do this. It's really just searching for that business model. And so right now, we actually are a little bit like a startup. We act and a company at the same time. So as a company, I trade my time for money. That's all it is. It's a very simple thing. I will consult other baby monitor companies. I'll do other engineering tasks related to cameras. And so we have a handful of us here that do that. But in my heart of hearts, I know that as an entrepreneur, to build the kind of value, I need to have assets. And one of those assets can be like IP or a product or some kind of a service that you're selling. I would say we're now back in search mode and saying, what can I identify? What problem is not being met right now in the market? And it's actually a really fun experience because, again, we're not out of cash. We're not in that capital crunch, scenario that I was in the first business. And yet you can take your time and really flesh out some ideas. So it's a really fun space to be in. The stress level has come down dramatically for me personally. It's fun to be able to approach your career with some curiosity. Be curious, be looking for some problems that you may have an advantage in solving.
Let's lean into that in a second. That's pretty interesting that you are a company, but you're also a startup. A long time ago, even like more than 10 years ago when I was back in school, there was a company recruiting at our university who was proud to say, we're a 17-year-old startup because they're like, oh, you want to work for a startup environment. And I'm like, that's not how this thing works because I'm also a pupil of blank, right? That was our key thing. The business model, lean startup, all that. And the startup is essentially, you're right, searching for the business model. But you said something interesting. You're living in both planes. You're a company, but you're also searching. How do you navigate between that, and how do you know you found it?
It wasn't Steve Blank. There's this thing called the wow factor test. I'm trying to remember the guy. I'll try and send you the link. He talks about the wow factor test. So right now, even as a company, I never did consulting before. This is new for me. Before I was trying to build something to sell to B2C. Now I'm B2B. I'm selling my products and my services to other companies. It's very custom. Okay, show me what you want to build. Let me show you what you're doing with other companies. You're trying to help them build a strategy. I'm trying to help them build a product or a thing or a widget. When I first got into this, I said, there's probably lots of tools to help me manage this. There's probably a good CRM, a good ERP, which enterprise resource planning. I thought there's probably some good software that will help me manage this. And I really, for my particular field, haven't found one. I have 5 different tools I have to get to work together. And it's this kludgy thing that I use. And so it's an area where this is an interesting problem. And so what it looks like in my day to day is talking to customers, divvying out work, managing a handful of projects. And in my head, I'm thinking, I bet I could do a lot more projects if I had this tool. And so I just pick at it because we happen to be the users of what we want to build and we know how to build it. So as I talk to my customers and I interact with them and I say, what would you think if I could give you a report that did X, Y, and Z? And they're like, not really a big deal to me, Nate. I'd be like, got it. And I check it off as something I'm not going to build into my little side project. And so that's that open curiosity again, where instead of just, okay, I'm going to sit down and do my Excel spreadsheet and do my Word document and send a bunch of emails and take a bunch of time doing the same thing over and over again. Is there a way I can automate this to make this a lot easier for me and maybe build a product at the same time? I think all great products do start from a need. Like they all start from some kind of need because chances are there's other people like you who have that same need. So yeah, it's interesting,
into
right?
The wow factor, when you get feedback, will this actually solve your problem? But
Yeah.
when you're looking at the wows, like it has to resonate with them, or can you explain that?
Yeah. Oh, you can see it visually. I actually like to be talking to them. Usually I'm not in the same room. Usually it's something like this, but I like to see the reaction because it's just body language, right? They can be like, yeah, Nate, love it. It's such a great idea. Anyway,
They're looking away. It's
look,
like you're like
anyway,
nonchalant
we
looking
got
away, shoulders down. Yeah, sure, whatever.
yeah. If it gives them some pause, if they ask a question, I think wow factor is the idea is if you got a room of like 10 of your prospective customers together and you gave them basically your 1 minute pitch and you asked them on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being super boring, 10 being amazing, like where does this idea land for you? And if you're somewhere 7, 8, 9, and 10, you have something that you can actually start iterating on and asking more questions and diving into. But if you have something that's 6 and below, or at least if you have something that's 4, 5, or 6, you probably just need to tweak it. 3 and below, it's no good, right? So
Yeah.
it's just a nice data-driven way to get
To lean
quick
into the
information.
features. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do you suggest like founders? Because right now, like you run the agency, but you're also finding what SaaS or what opportunities can I build on top of this that could be its own product standalone in the future, and we can invest all our efforts on that. That seems to be it's not very common, but it is a trajectory that I've seen agencies take. Is that something that you just want to do because you always want to build that next thing? Or is it something that you would recommend anyone who provides services find something that you could leverage technology to solve a core problem with?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. A mentor of mine he's Nate, if you're going to, we all have hours every week. Every one of us has the same number of time. And so if you're going to be spending your time on something, like spend your time on something big, don't make it like the tiny. And I think I do have that mindset, like you're just describing of, I like to think of how can I scale this if it's a good idea. But again, I say that with the caveat that premature scaling is the enemy. It is the enemy, I'm convinced, of all small businesses, or at least startups that are pursuing a scalable venture. They prematurely scale. Like I could just say, this is my business is exactly, I'm going to build this product for my business and I could probably do it for my business, but it might not work for anyone else. And so it's those questions. I'll be honest, Raul, I haven't found that I haven't gotten enough in talking even to my current clients that I work with to be like, yeah, this is something I totally need. The real people are actually like my competitors, people I work with for business. They're the ones I want to actually use this type of software. Yeah. And I talk to them all the time. So when I've ruminated a little bit more on it, I think we'll spring into action. But I don't think I answered your question. You really said, we're in a unique position really at this point where we are bootstrapping our own company, where we have a company. So half of us is a company. And then there's a part of us that says we're really just searching for that next big thing. And it could just be the software that helps us run our internal R&D. Exactly.
Which is pretty cool. Like you mentioned, it is a unique opportunity where it's not, you have to make a sale with that new R&D. The business is running afloat. Things are running properly, but this is a new opportunity. And I think this is a place where people can get to. And usually when I work with clients, I talk about helping them get to a new baseline because right now they're here and then they go up the staircase of growth. And then there's a new baseline. And from there, you can have a different vantage point. Either do more of the same and continue to grow, or in this case, look at what else you can build and have new opportunity to build on top of that. And it's a really unique place to be at. And like you mentioned, it's lower stress and it's more, I get to do it because I can, not because I have to.
And think about, it's just fun. If you're looking at just the things that you hate to do and you're like, I hate doing this. And you're like not looking forward to Monday because you're like, I have to do this again. And if you can just flip the script a little bit and think, how could I make this thing that I hate doing all the time better or easier? How can I automate this so that my life's easier? And so you're playing this little puzzle with yourself. You're trying to figure out, how can I organize things a little differently? You do this all the time, I'm sure. But that problem solving, the act of solving your own problems is a fun thing to do. If you can find joy in that, then I think it changes your whole approach to your business.
Oh, I love that. Nate, I think this is a good place to close. Where can people go to learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn. NateRubin.com is our website. And there's a contact form there. You can reach out to us and be happy to talk.
Cool. Put those links in the show notes. Nate, thank you again.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thanks, Raul. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to get more of these podcasts, please go ahead and subscribe to wherever you're watching or listening to the pod. If you have any suggestions or questions that you want me to answer on the pod, or you have a guest that you want me to interview, please go ahead and email me all of your suggestions and questions at podcast@dogoodwork.io. That's podcast@dogoodwork.io. If you'd like to give me public feedback, you can go on Apple Podcasts, and from there, you can leave up to a 5-star review. I would greatly appreciate that. If you like more free resources where you can get my best strategies to help you increase your company's performance and scale profitably, you can get handpicked articles to propel your growth, and you can get trainings and discussions that I give freely online, as well as low-cost resources such as my books and guides. You can get all of that by going to dogoodwork.io/free-growth-resources. 90% of all of these resources are not behind any email opt-ins. You can get instant access by going to dogoodwork.io/free-growth-resources. Now, if you'd like to accelerate your progress and shorten the gap between information and action and start seeing results in your business, let's work together to increase your company's performance and scale profitably and serve more clients without the overwhelm. You can request a free clarity call to see how we can best support you to reach your goals by going to dogoodwork.io/apply. Again, that's dogoodwork.io/apply. As always, it's an honor to be a small part in your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.